also the author of the new book, 100 Things NASCAR Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. As you can see on the camera there, a terrific book. And whenever you can come up with a list of 100 things for people to do, Mike, I think it's a winner. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell me a little bit about this book and what inspired you to write it.
Well, it's part of a series that's published by Triumph Books of Chicago. They've done books on Phillies fans, Cubs fans, Celtic fans, Yankee fans, so forth. And they wanted to do one on NASCAR and asked me to take a shot at it. And made up a list of, I guess, a couple hundred things I could have put in there and tried to go through the process of elimination. And got it down to a pretty reasonable 100, I think. NASCAR is a relatively young sport compared to baseball, football, basketball, and so forth. But still 60 or 65 years of history, so there's a lot to go through.
Did you have a hard time when you were trying to narrow this down? Whenever we do things like this, it's kind of hard to try and figure out how much you want to play to the history of the sport and how much you want to do to something that's relatively new that fans are familiar with. Did that give you a problem at all?
Well, yeah, in a way it did. You want to pay attention to both the diehard fan, the person that already knows a lot about the history, but also reach out to the casual fan, the one that might have come along over the last 5 or 10 years. So it's kind of a balancing act, but you really can't ignore the history, the pioneer guys, the Buck Bakers, the Bill France Seniors, the Herb Thomas type guys who really got the sport up and running and sort of laid a foundation for the folks who would come later, Richard Petty and David Pearson, Cale Yarborough, and on up until the present day. So it's kind of a mix.
Mike, this is Charlie. Steve and I are right now in the middle of or getting ready to get in the middle of our. I think we do every few years. It's a NASCAR NCAA bracket type thing where we take what we pick as the 64 greatest drivers in NASCAR, and we randomly mix them and feed them into a bracket and let our readers and listeners vote for who should advance. And one of the things I told Steve that I enjoy most about doing that is getting into some of these guys that I don't know a whole lot about, and just looking through your table of contents. Tell us a little bit about Red Byron, for example, because when I'm doing the thumbnail for Red Byron, he didn't have a lot of wins, didn't run all that many cup type races. So what makes him one of the greats?
Well, that's really kind of an essay answer, but I'll try to give you a short one. Byron suffered a really bad leg injury in World War II. Yep. And came back and resumed his driving career. And to do that, his foot was hurt so bad, his leg was hurt so badly, it had to be strapped to the clutch in the car. He couldn't use it otherwise. Despite that, he goes on and wins a championship, wins some races. Right. One of the reasons his NASCAR numbers are not higher is a lot of the guys back in those days ran races outside of NASCAR. They would travel to another state and win a race sanctioned by some other group and win more money. Then come back and run a few NASCAR races, go back and run outside NASCAR. Bill France Sr., the founder, didn't like that very much, so he would occasionally penalize guys who did that. But still, the money was so good in some of the bigger races outside NASCAR then that they did it anyway. So that's why you see some of the numbers for some of those guys not looking as impressive as you might think.
Well, it's interesting when you look at the title of your book, of 100 Things that NASCAR fans should know and do before they die. The know part, I take that a lot of people don't know a lot of the history, and that's something that they should learn. But in your mind, what is the thing that somebody should, the number one thing somebody should do as a NASCAR fan before they die?
Well, I think that would be go to the Daytona 500. The sports classic race, the most important race, the start of every season is at Daytona. And Daytona International Speedway is sort of a cathedral for stock car racing. When you're there, you can just kind of feel the history that's bubbled around that place for 50 years. Running a close second to that would be going to a race at Darlington in South Carolina, the sort of the Fenway Park of stock car racing. Track that opened in 1950 and still is essentially the same. Very difficult to do well there. A lot of history at Darlington. So to me, the most important things are still those historic things. The places that have been around forever.
Well, not only did you obviously write this book, but you've been to a huge number of NASCAR races. I know over 600. You followed this sport forever. Charlie and I started the show tonight talking about the NASCAR decision to keep the penalties to Chad Knaus. Everybody seems to have an opinion on this. My opinion was that I thought it was kind of a travesty, the way that NASCAR penalizes teams for infractions before they hit the racetrack. We just had Patrick Donahue on the show, the car chief for Tommy Baldwin, and his explanation, I'll take it, is that NASCAR, deems that the cars should be fit for the racetrack when they go through the gate. Where do you fall within this whole deal of the way that the C-pillar gate came down?
Well, I can see both sides of it. I think the penalty was somewhat harsh. Mainly because the infraction was in an area that is not measured by the NASCAR templates. It was strictly a visual inspection of the car, which, in a lot of ways doesn't seem fair. But the flip side of that is, in a lot of cases over the years, people who've been around the sport for a long time and who are there every week can look at a car and say, boy, that's not right. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not in a template area, if you've got a piece of the car that's sticking out a half an inch more than it should, that's pretty visible to the educated eye and can make a really big difference at a track like Daytona. So that's where your problem is. It's every surface of the car can't be covered by a template measurement. Some of it has to be done visually, and this time they got caught. In some races in the past, they haven't. So you sort of take your chance.
Mike, thanks so much for being with us. Before I let you go real quick, the million-dollar question always is, what's the easiest way for people to get a hold of your book?
It should be available wherever good books are sold. All chain bookstores, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, all those places that have it. It's been out now for a couple of weeks.
All right, excellent. We'll make sure everybody picks up another great book on NASCAR. You can never get too much information on the sport. And if you don't mind, we'll give you a call again in a few weeks and add you to our rotating group of NASCAR journalists.
Yep, be glad to do that.
All right, very good. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike Hembree, author of 100 Things NASCAR Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. We'll have a link on our Facebook page to that book where you can buy it.
And we'll figure out a way to give this puppy away as well. We've got the books that we got
stuff to give away. In fact,
yep.
while we're on the subject of giveaways, we do have that Danica Patrick prize package to give away. I don't know who the winner is yet because the folks at TISO have the list.
Okay.
So as soon as I get that list, I sent an email out today. As soon as I get that list, we will do our random selection and get that prize out to somebody that entered.
All right. We're going to take our bottom of the hour break. When we come back, we will talk with Landon Castle, who is piloting the number 83 this year for BK Motorsports, a team that really kind of came on at the last second there, but it has shown some promise early on. So we'll